Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Semantics of a Nice Guy. I am your only host for today, Lando van Rooyen. I'm sure by the title you could see that this is episode 9.5, and this is our second PODDY Nugget. And for those who don't really understand what a PODDY Nugget is basically just when Henry and I can't really get together because of schedule clashes and stuff like that, we'd still like to put out some content for you guys. So we just film with our own guest, or we film something alone, or record, I guess. And yeah, we just want to produce some stuff for you guys and still come up with some different things. So what I thought I would do today is maybe just summarize part of a book that I've been reading. Just because while I was reading the book, I was like, this takes very long. It would be very great if this could just be summarized for me so I could just get more books done in a day. And I guess that does come with speed reading, but I thought it would be quite nice if I could do that for you guys. So the book that I was reading is called Burn the Business Plan: What Great Entrepreneurs Really Do. This is a book written by Carl J. Schramm, and he is a university professor at Syracuse University and former president of the Ewing Marion Kaufman Foundation. He's authored, co-authored, or edited several books, including Better Capitalism, Good Capitalism / Bad Capitalism, Inside Real Innovation, The Entrepreneurial Imperative, and Controlling Healthcare Costs. He's a very well-respected person in business, and I did find the book very interesting. So what I thought I would do is just focus on pretty much the second chapter of the book, which is called 12 Things Every Aspiring Entrepreneur Should Know. And I do agree with some of the points. Some of the other points I would like to challenge a little bit, but I do think he definitely knows his stuff. I mean, that is definitely for sure. But yeah, I think let's just get straight into it. So the first point that he brings up right at the beginning of the chapter is you can only learn by doing. And I think this pretty much stands for anything. If you are trying to learn how to drive, you can watch as many videos as you want, or someone can sit with you and explain for hours how you drive a car. But the only way you're actually going to be able to do it is by physically doing it and learning that way. And obviously he's just trying to bring that into business as well. I mean, learning to do your taxes and learning how supply chains works and logistics and how employee relationships should be integrated into your business model. So that's obviously what he was trying to bring in there. I don't really have much of a point on that. I think he's pretty spot on. I think that's probably the most important thing for you guys to walk away with is literally this first point is you can only learn by doing. Now, the second point, which I didn't really agree with all that much, was starting a company is not for kids. Now, if you read this part in this chapter, I guess you do understand the point where he comes from. He kind of uses statistics and shows that most entrepreneurs are only about 40 when they launch their business, and about roughly 80% of people are above the age of 35 when they start their business. And the point that he was trying to make is experience is very important going into things like these. It's very difficult to just come straight out of high school, no experience, no capital. It's very difficult to start anything like that. But I do want to challenge this a little bit because I do think exceptions exist. For example, Patrick Ambrin is the creator of Brand Yourself, and he started this while he was studying at Syracuse University. He started it, I think, in 2014. In 2016, the shareholders valued it at roughly about $15 million. So basically, what he saw was his mate had a bad image on the internet because a sex offender had the same name. So he came up with this idea to basically optimize your social media presence, your online presence, for your possible employers to find you and not confuse you with someone else, and also just find the best parts about you. And now I also think that starting a business when you're younger is probably in some ways a little bit easier because you do have some advantages, such as your knowledge of new tech and probably also your lack of exposure to the cultural norms that exist. Kind of keeps you a little bit more open-minded. So I do kind of challenge that point, but it's also a very good point. Like, it is very good to spend a lot of time on your plan or idea, at least, before you just jump straight into it. So point 2, starting a company is not for kids. Now the third point is you will learn more in a company than at college. And this I could not agree with anymore. I mean, I'm studying right now, I'm studying investment management, and I don't know, I'm already in my second year, and sometimes I just feel like the content that we go through doesn't really seem very relevant to the work. And I think once you get to a point where you start working for someone and you start working in the industry you're interested in, I mean, whatever that be, even if you're into fine art, I think your exposure to the real world is kind of what helps you build up knowledge, and it also helps you build up knowledge quicker, and it also helps you to retain that knowledge a little bit better. But I guess that's just my opinion. But I do definitely agree. I agree with that point. I think it's a very good point. Now, the fourth point is kind of related back to the whole varsity thing. And point 4 says, if you go to college, choose your major carefully. Now, what Carl said in this part of the chapter, I'm a little bit confused by, because I don't really feel like it's exactly like the way he says it is. But he basically says that you should be studying engineering or physical science if you are keen to be an entrepreneur. And this is purely based on the problem-solving skills involved in these courses. So for the problem-solving skills, not physically for the concepts that you learn in them. So I mean, it is a bit confusing when he says you should be studying engineering and physical sciences when it's more like a business sense of things. But personally, I don't really feel like what you choose to major in or what you choose to study really affects anything when you're an entrepreneur. I think there's so many examples of people who go into one line of work and then they end up creating a business that's completely different. I'm not very clued up on the specifics, but I do know that there's a story about 2 basketball coaches who literally went into a completely different line of work, has nothing to do with sport at all. So I mean, that does happen. So I don't really think that's a point for anyone to look into too much. Now, the 5th point is good companies don't happen overnight. And I think this is probably something that you hear quite often when people talk about businesses. I think that ideal dream does exist where your company just starts like Instagram or Facebook and it's just a massive hit overnight. But I guess that is not realistic in these days. I guess it does happen to some people, but not to most. A lot of people also say that first ideas seldom make companies successful. So yeah, like you should just keep on coming up with different ideas, and you got to realize that it's going to take some time, and you got to be prepared to put the time in. That is basically what Carl is saying. And if I could just finish this point off with what Bear Grylls would say, which is improvise, adapt, and overcome. Now, point 6 is venture capital is likely irrelevant. Now, this kind of ties in with the title of the book, which is Burn the Business Plan. And basically what Carl is saying in this part of the chapter is that business plans only really exist if you're looking for people to invest, like venture capital, or any other kind of investors who are just interested in finding a business that they can invest into instead of going onto like the stock market or something like that. So that's kind of why he says your business plan is irrelevant, because he believes that venture capital is irrelevant, because he's found in his studies that not a lot of new startups really use venture capital. It's most likely people using their savings or even family money, or even just getting a very close friend or family member to invest into the business and then get paid out straight away as soon as it's up and running. I guess that's also not always the case. But point 7 is every startup has one CEO. And I guess if you look at your bigger companies, you do see that not a lot of companies have CEOs, because a lot of shareholders tend to look at one person to make decisions and also to take blame if something goes wrong. But I do feel that in your smaller companies, I don't think it's such a bad idea for you to have two, I'm going to air quoted CEO, but just, two people who are kind of running the show. It does kind of help to have someone there with a different point of view, instead of just one person who sits with all this stress and they just have to make the right decision. And I think it's kind of nice to have another person to fall back onto if you're feeling a little bit unsure about things. But I guess that's just my opinion, and it definitely differs a little bit from Carl Schramm on this occasion. So point 8 says, when you start a company, you're a boss. And I guess this is true, and a lot of people don't really want to think about it, but as soon as you start a business, you are most likely going to have to make very tough decisions. I think you read these kind of things in the news all the time. I myself have not started a business, so I don't know exactly how tough these decisions are, but people need to get laid off and new people need to get hired, and I guess that's just the tip of the iceberg. But in this part of the chapter, he mentions 2 useful rules for hiring when you're a boss. And the first point is to be careful hiring friends and family, because employment cannot be equilateral like friendships are without having any major disputes. And the second point is to be careful to compensate your employees with company ownership, because if they become less valuable to the business in the future, it could kind of complicate things. Now, point number 9 is sales are everything. And I didn't even add any notes to this because I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Without a business selling its product or its services, it is destined to just die off. And I think that's pretty much where any business should start. And I think that's where Carl felt the same, is focusing on how you can optimize your number of sales before you start looking at your finer details within your business, such as customer relations, which all then later on tie into sales as well. So I don't really have much to say on that, but I do think it is a very good point, and I think it's something that a lot of people have to realize. And I guess, okay, if you do end up starting a non-profit, it might not be like that, but obviously you are trying to do as much business as possible, even if you are a non-profit, because you want to just make as much change as possible. And to do that, you're going to have to raise more money or sell more things, and that's just how it works. Point number 10, which I quite liked, is you need a cold circle. Now, Carlos Matos, Chile's former economic minister, sorry, that was quite tough to say, explained it as having a hot circle containing your family and your friends and other supporters. And this circle kind of allows for positive reinforcement when it comes to your ideas and the decisions that you've already made. It does kind of help just having that positive reinforcement there, to kind of make you feel like you're on the right track. But the thing that made him quite a good minister was the fact that he also had a cold circle. And this cold circle was purely for unbiased input from people that he knew from like absolutely no point in life. And they just told him honestly how they felt. And I think that's very good for anyone to have in your life, even if it's not just to start a business, even if you're working on a different project, if you're working on art and stuff. I think it's very difficult to ask the people close to you for their honest opinions, because obviously they don't want to hurt your feelings and stuff like that. So it is definitely worth just getting a little bit of a consensus from people that don't know you well and who aren't worried about your feelings. Yeah, pretty much. So point 11 is making money is what it's all about. And when I first read this, I was like, whoa, okay, I don't know if I believe this is true, because you also get non-profits, and obviously that's not what making money is all about. But later on, during this part of the chapter, you realize that he's not talking about making profits for yourself, but it is more to expand the business, and you need to produce a product, you need to sell the product, and you need to make money for you to expand the business and just keep on releasing more and more of these products in a more efficient way. And that, I guess that also does apply to non-profits. Like, you would like to get more money in as quickly as possible so you can make as much change as possible. So what started off to be a kind of a sketchy point is actually quite a good point. Now, the last point, and he finishes it off strong. Point number 12 is, if opportunity doesn't knock, build your own door. It's a very good saying. I will literally carry that around with me forever. I think it applies in so many ways, in so many parts of life. A little quote from this part of the chapter says, "Fortune favors the prepared mind." And I thought that was just quite a good quote as well. But basically what Carl talks about in this part of the chapter is it's not about what you do, it's about who you know, something like that. You guys know what saying I'm talking about. But basically his biggest point was build valuable social networks to help you create an opportunity for yourself, which before creating those social networks wouldn't even exist. And the last point he kind of brings up right at the end of the chapter is, the more you know, the more creatively you think. So not only do you have to create social networks and talk to people and, really absorb the knowledge that they have for you, but I think it's also very important for you to read books specifically on, the industry that you're in, and also maybe like a second industry, because I think entrepreneurship is really the synthesis of two ideas which haven't been used before, and that's kind of how you come up with different business ideas. So I just thought that was very, very interesting. And that is all the points from Carl J. Schramm. I really do suggest that you guys go check out the rest of this book. It is very good. That was only chapter 2, and I would just like to reiterate, these are just my opinions on the book. I didn't quote everything word for word. I just wanted to give you guys my ideas on what I thought about this book. But this was only the one chapter. There are many other chapters. Goes up to chapter 11, why to start a company, what motivates entrepreneurs. So it's definitely worth a read. And I think that is us for today. Please let me know if you guys enjoyed this episode. Send us an email at niceguysemantics@gmail.com. You guys can slide into our DMs on Instagram at niceguysemantics. Please just let me know if you guys liked this episode. If you didn't, let me know if you'd like me to do another chapter in this book at some point in the future, or maybe do a different book on a completely different topic. I'd be more than happy to do that, even if it is on how to build a house out of stone. I hope you guys have a good day, and I'd just like to finish this off with another quote from the book, and that is, first create, second be judged. There's just no way of knowing if something is good until you test it. All right, guys. I'll see you soon.